Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our 2026 Legislative Agenda Kickoff event for IEC members. We have been hard at work the last few weeks to really take a look at all the bills that have been introduced by our Legislative Assembly, and we're really excited to talk about what are our priorities for this year. We'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit, but before we do, I just want to give a quick recap of who IEC is. So thank you so much for joining us today. We've been doing this work for over 50 years to make sure that we safeguard our um, Illinois overall, our people, our plants, animals, and our natural systems that we all depend on. And we really do this in collaboration and coordination with over 130 different environmental groups that operate in Illinois, by making sure that we're advancing our mission to advance equitable policies that create a healthier environment for Illinois. And we do that across our six different issue areas. Today, you're going to be hearing about all our different priorities in sustainable agriculture and conservation, clean energy, sustainable transportation, clean water, and zero waste, and really help give you guys the information and tools necessary to help us in our policy advocacy work and making sure we're educating legislators in our state to ensure that we are advancing these policies. So again, thank you so much for being a member, for supporting us over the years and making sure that we have the fuel necessary to uh, get our legislative wins across the finish line. So it's going to be an interesting year for us. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Jen to talk a little bit about the lay of the land for our second year in the 104th General Assembly.
As Danny said, we are heading into that second year of the 104th General Assembly. That means that bills that were introduced last year can still be available this year, but it doesn't mean that they have to be, so you have to proactively ask for them to move. This session will extend until January 2027, in which there's a new inauguration that not only includes the House and Senate members, but also the statewide slate. So elections are really important this year. The primary election is March 17th, and I can definitely tell you, like, go vote. Make sure that you have a plan to vote, that you're registered to vote, and get ready to go vote. And because of that, there are a number of members that in the House and Senate are running for Congress, running for different statewide seats, and there's a lot of people not here. And so this is kind of a chilling effect on legislation that is being considered in this calendar year. Also, the calendar is wild in that it's 16 weeks of total session. Only 8 weeks are the House and Senate in the state together, which is really unusual. And then there's 4 weeks House, 4 weeks Senate that are separate. So it's a very shortened calendar, and they're not very collaborative in the way they put the calendars together. And so just like there's going to be some challenges with moving anything, and we're going to have to do we're going to have to move just our priorities. It's going to be things we might prep for next year on a lot of things. We're already tracking hundreds and hundreds of bills, though. Legislators definitely introduced a lot of bills. There's a lot of repeats. There's a lot of things from last year. We got some bills we're doing this afternoon, and we worked with lawmakers to draft over 30 bills as well. The budget, Governor's State of the State and the budget address is tomorrow, and we expect it to not be the deficit that has been considered in previous years. However, we don't fully know the scope of the budget deficit because of threats to human service cuts from the federal government and threats to IEPA and other programs that could be really devastating to the budget as a whole. Some of these estimates have ranged from 500 million to $1 billion in cuts from different human services items. Thus far, threatened cuts have been this administration has combated those cuts in court and been successful. So we haven't really felt that yet, but we still could. And so that is a piece that we're going to look at in the budget. We'll be looking at what the IEPA budget looks like, the DNR budget, Department of Ag, and we'll be reporting on that to everybody on what's been proposed tomorrow. So, but we still expect, the number one priority of legislators this year is going to be that budget response. And a lot of that is going to happen in May. But long story short, we expect a very slow session until after the primary.
Thanks so much, Jen. And to get us really guided on what we're going to be working on this year, some of these conversations over our 30 bills, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Kate Caldwell, to talk about before we jump there, I do want to highlight a few other pieces. Like Jen had mentioned, we have a lot of moving parts to the General Assembly. As y'all can tell, we're already moving through a lot of the introductions of both Senate bills and House bills. um, Jen mentioned that a lot of those are not going to move until after the primary for the Senate. They will have to do a bit of movement on substantive bills to get them out of committee by March 13th. But you can see in the House they're pushing it back until after that primary deadline. And then after that, the dates even out for both Senate and House. So April and May are going to be pretty busy as far as keeping eyes on any of the bills that are still live and active. We're expecting it's going to be a lot of smaller initiatives, but we're hopeful with some of our bills that we're going to talk about in a little bit that we get a few wins this year with our legislature. So now, where I was leading us, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Kay Caldwell to talk about our open space bills.
Thanks, Danny. Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Caldwell. And as Danny mentioned, I will kick us off with talking a bit about our open space priority bills. So first up, we have our Wetlands Protection Bill. That's Senate Bill 2401, House Bill 3596, being led by Senator Ellman and Rev. Moeller. And so we know that wetlands, they're doing a lot of work for us that we don't always see. They filter pollution before it reaches rivers, as well as our drinking water sources. They're helping absorb our floodwaters. They're supporting our fish and wildlife. And as we know, recent federal court decisions, especially after the 2023 Sackett versus EPA ruling, those dramatically narrowed which wetlands were protected under federal law. So as a result, many wetlands in Illinois, I believe is up to 90%, particularly smaller seasonal ones, are now at risk or of being filled or developed without any review. So this bill is going to fill that gap at the state level. It's restoring protection so that wetlands don't necessarily lose those safeguards just because federal rules have changed. So we're pushing this because once wetlands are gone, they're gone. And the costs, they're going to show up later, whether that's through flooding, polluted water, or even expensive infrastructure fixes. Next, we have our farmer tax benefits bill that we're working with American Farmland Trust on. This is House Bill 4849 and Senate Bill 2020-81, being led by Representative Gazzardi as well as Senator Martwick. And so across Illinois, we know that our farmland and open space are being converted to development at a steady pace, but once that land is gone, it rarely actually returns to production, and communities actually lose the benefits that these working lands provide. So that's through local food, through clean water, through wildlife habitat, and even through economic stability. So this bill is creating a voluntary tax-based incentive that helps landowners keep land in agriculture or conservation uses while retaining ownership. So it's flexible, it's practical, especially for families that are making those long-term land decisions. So we're supporting this bill because it slows farmland loss without actually heavy-handed regulation. And it gives farmers those financial tools that make sense while keeping working lands working, essentially. Next, we have our Eliminating PFAS from Pesticides bill, House Bill 4523, Senate Bill 3400, being led by Blair Sherlock as well as Martwick. PFAS chemicals, or forever chemicals, we know that they don't break down in the environment. They actually accumulate in water, soil, wildlife, and sometimes even in people. So while much attention has actually focused on PFAS in drinking water, we've actually seen recent testing that has shown that some pesticide products also contain PFAS, sometimes unintentionally, sometimes without clear disclosure. So this bill is going to address that upstream problem. It requires transparency about PFAS and pesticide products, prohibits pesticides with intentionally added PFAS, and phases out PFAS containing spray adjuvants as well. So we're pushing this because preventing PFAS contamination is actually far less costly, but also more effective in cleaning it up later. So this is about stopping pollution at the source and then protecting farmers, applicators, as well as downstream communities. Next, we have our Prescribed Burn Liability Claims Fund. That's Senate Bill 3399, House Bill 5306, also being led by Martwick and as well as Moeller. So this is essentially prescribed fire support. Prescribed fire, it's essential for managing prairies, forests, as well as invasive species, and it also reduces the risk of those catastrophic wildfires. But we found out that many land managers actually hesitate to use prescribed fire because of liability concerns, even when burns are conducted by trained professionals following those best practices. So this bill will create a pilot program to kind of help cover those losses if something goes wrong during a properly conducted prescribed burn. It also reduces fear while kind of reinforcing those high standards for safety as well. So we're supporting this bill because we know prescribed fire is one of the actually most effective conservation tools that we have. And we know that liability concerns, they shouldn't prevent responsible land management there as well. Our last priority bill in the open space area would be our Pesticides Notification Act, which is House Bill 1596, being led by Representative Bobby Diaz, and then will also be led by Senator Morrison in the Senate. So pesticide applications, they can occur whether it's near schools, whether it's near parks, playgrounds, or even forest preserves without families or individuals even being notified in advance. And so that lack of notification is leading to unnecessary exposure, especially for children and people that have health sensitivities. So this bill, it does not ban pesticides. It simply requires notification when applications occur near those sensitive sites. And so we're pushing this because basic transparency helps keep people informed. It helps us make decisions, helps us build trust among each other. And so knowing when applications are happening allows those school administrators, allows parents, and allows communities to take simple precautions if needed. So those are a few of our top priority open space bills and who's leading them. And I'll kick it to Samira to go through energy.
Thanks, Kate. Hi, everyone. Samira Hanassian, Energy Policy Director at IEC. I'm going to talk about our three key bills here under our clean energy portfolio, starting with our Power Act data centers regulatory bill. So data centers are driving up electricity costs and water use across Illinois, with families effectively subsidizing massive energy and water demands from big tech while lacking transparency and protections. Without stronger legislative action, beyond our Clean and Reliable Grid Affordability Act and alignment with the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, these facilities will continue increasing utility bills, straining local water supplies, and worsening pollution in already overburdened communities. So we are seeing a trifecta at the national level between rate increases, more data centers coming online, as well as just overall how all that is trickling down at the state level. And we've been doing our best to address some of those issues through grid reliability positions. But at this point, it's really time that we ensure that as these data centers come online, we are doing what we can to save consumers from burdening and shouldering the costs of their work. So the Power Act ensures data centers cover their own costs and bring new clean energy and capacity to the grid, so families aren't stuck paying higher utility bills or suffering from more pollution. It sets strong guardrails to protect water resources, limit diesel pollution, and require transparency and community benefits while encouraging responsible, competitive data center investment. Next, we are working on two key solar bills this year. Solar is a key resource to keep energy affordable, reliable, and clean, but outdated local permitting rules are slowing progress and driving up costs for Illinoisans. Residential solar faces unnecessary delays and red tape, with homeowners and renters often having to navigate the same lengthy utility approval processes regardless of system size or complexity. So first and foremost, we have the balcony plug-in solar bill here, which essentially will allow for homeowners to get a small solar panel, plug it in, and utilize it to for some small uses around their home or building, and ensure that they are not having to pay for permits and other pay through other barriers that may pop up for formal rooftop solar. So essentially legalizing this plug-in balcony solar concept. The next one is instant solar permitting. This started back during the Biden administration, where they had created a software called Solar App Plus to allow for expedient solar permitting processes, and we're interested in bringing that to Illinois. Any software can be used. The state could either use Solar App or an equivalent, including creating its own, but this would essentially allow for folks going through the solar permitting process to get rooftop solar. Otherwise, if they meet all the requirements in the checklist, this would allow them to streamline that process and not go through weeks and weeks and weeks of delays. So both the instant permitting and solar plug-in solar bills would address key barriers by broadening solar access to more people, cutting red tape, and strengthening our grid. With that, do I pass it to Danny or Kate?
We're actually going to go back to Jen to talk about zero waste bills.
Great. So everybody, this is the year we are going to get the polystyrene foam foodware ban done. We're still in the same bill number at Senate Bill 1531. This bill is out of the Senate. It's out of the House. It is on second reading in the House. It just needs a few more votes. And if you are somebody that hasn't contacted your lawmaker yet, please do immediately. We are especially lawmakers on the west side and south side of Chicago have received a lot of messaging from the Chemical Industry Council about how this is going to impact small restaurants, even though the Illinois Restaurant Association is neutral, as is the Illinois Retail Merchants Association. It's time to do this. I was just in New York and everybody got every corner cart. None of them have foam foodware anymore because it's banned in the state. We need to act on this and act on it right away. And so this is the year to do it. Contact your lawmaker. We're hoping to call it in March and April when there's full attendance. We're also hoping Skip the Stuff is a bill about plastic utensil and other item delivery, and this bill requires that third-party delivery apps ask you if you want utensils, and if they don't deliver them, they can be fined. And so, or if they deliver them when you didn't want them, they can be fined. So it's by request only for a large number of things such as silverware, condiment containers, all of that stuff. And so this bill just needs to move in the Senate. It's been like a little bit stuck. And so we're hoping to get leadership to move it this year. This year, there's also a bill about plastic pellets, House Bill 3278. And it might be a different bill number. We're trying to see what's the problem and whether we can get it dislodged. We're also working on methane emissions from landfills through food waste diversion, and Senate Bill 2852 is a bill from Senator Johnson about keeping food out of landfills and starting with making sure that we're wasting less food. The food is going to people who need it, and then it is being composted or going through anaerobic digestion. Really important bill. And then the last two are ones we're working on. One is a extended producer responsibility bill for vapes. Vapes are definitely a new type of pollution. They have lithium-ion batteries in them. They can have nicotine, which can be a hazardous waste, and heavy metals. And so we're looking at how to make the manufacturers responsible for recycling those products. That's a discussion that came from some students at Pontiac High School. And then the last one, this is the a year that we're third or fourth year we're working on natural or organic reduction, which is a burial method for human bodies. And several states allow it. Illinois does not. And we have some really just very sad case studies of people who have wanted to use this option for burial of their loved ones and have been able to do so, unable to do so. And so this is a bill we're hoping to advance this year. So all of those super important pieces of legislation.
Thanks so much, Jen. And now we're going to go back to Kate to talk about our agriculture bills.
Thanks, Danny. So first up with our agriculture priority bills, we're going to start with agrivoltaics. And I know that is sometimes a mouthful to say, but this bill is essentially providing a clear definition for agrivoltaics. So if you're unfamiliar, agrivoltaics is essentially combining solar energy production with active farming, allowing land to kind of generate clean energy while also staying in agricultural use. But right now we have different, varying, inconsistent definitions that is kind of creating confusion for our farmers, our developers, and even our local governments. So this bill is establishing a clear and consistent definition, so everyone is essentially working from the same playbook here. So we'll be supporting this bill with our partners because Illinois needs clean energy, but we also need to protect our farmland. And agrivoltaics essentially lets us do both if the rules are clear there. Next is our land buffer requirement being led by Senator Ellman, that's Senate Bill 1789. One of the biggest drivers of water pollution in Illinois is actually runoff. And so when land is farmed or developed right up to the edge of those rivers, those streams or lakes, nutrients and sediments, they actually wash directly into the water during the storms. And so this bill requires a buffer of non-invasive vegetation along those waterways. And as we know, buffers, they slow runoff, they reduce soil erosion, they also keep those nutrients out of the rivers and lakes before they become a problem necessarily downstream. So we'll be advocating for this bill because we know buffers, they're actually a low-cost way to actually protect our water quality. And they can also help landowners keep soil on their fields and reduce long-term erosion there. Next is cover crops incentives, Senate Bill 3721, House Bill 5512. This is essentially our fall cover crops spring savings program. And so cover crops, they improve soil health, they reduce nutrient runoff. They also help farmland stay sort of resilient during extreme weather. But we know that adopting them can actually involve some upfront costs, some risks, especially during tight planting windows. So this legislation is actually creating the fall cover crops for spring savings incentive programs to help kind of offset those costs and also encourage more farmers to plant those cover crops. So we know the cover crops, they benefit everyone, not just farmers, but also downstream communities and even our water systems. So adoption basically works best when farmers are supported and not penalized for doing the right thing there. Our next set of bills are concentrated animal feeding operations regulations, all three being led by Senator Ellman. And so as livestock operations continue to grow larger, their impacts on nearby communities, whether that's air quality, water use, odor, and traffic, they grow as well. So these bills collectively, they're strengthening the oversight and transparency without necessarily halting our agricultural development. So that first bill is Senate Bill 2331. That is our livestock facility setback requirements bill. And so as livestock facilities get larger, we know that their impacts are extending beyond those property lines. So as I mentioned, those odors, those air emissions, water quality concerns, they can significantly impact nearby residents. So this bill is setting minimum setback requirements for new or expanding facilities, creating a physical distance between operations and where people actually live. And so we are supportive of this because we know that those setbacks are a common planning tool and they don't necessarily stop agriculture. They just help ensure that growth respects the public health, especially rural quality of life there. The next bill under our CAFO work is the CAFO Local Oversight and Notification Bill, Senate Bill 2332. And so communities, we often learn about new CAFO proposals only after the process has already started and is underway. And so that lack of early notice is creating a little bit of tension, a little bit of conflict and frustration. So this bill is requiring timely notification, and it allows our county boards to request an informational meeting before that construction begins. It doesn't give local governments veto power. It simply is ensuring transparency there. So this is leading to better communication, which also leads to better outcomes and also fewer surprises there. The last of the three of our CAFOs is the water supply verification for facility expansions, which is Senate Bill 2333. Essentially, I call this the groundwater availability checks. And so large livestock facility expansions, they can significantly increase water use, especially groundwater. And so in areas already experiencing water stress, that can affect nearby residents, farms as well, and our ecosystems there. So this bill is requiring verification that adequate water supplies exist for both the expanded facility and also existing users before those approvals are granted. So we support this because water planning is easier and also less contentious when it happens up front. So collectively, those are our agriculture priorities for this legislative session. And I will pass it to Danny to talk about transportation.
Thanks so much, Kate. And I am seeing questions come in the chat. So I'm gonna ask some support from my colleagues. If there's any questions in the Q&A, we'll answer them there, but also there will have some time at the end to ask live questions and answer them with you all. So feel free to raise your hand if you do have that question. We will make sure to call you in and we'll work through some of these questions. But moving on to our transportation portfolio, I think right now what we're looking here at the state level is moving forward with the momentum that we got from the Northern Illinois Transit Authority Act that passed late in veto session last year. We know that that was a key component to help reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation sector, but we still have a lot more work to do to make sure that we are reducing those greenhouse gases. And a couple of those pieces are also realizing that there's a lot of challenges at the national level that are slowing down our progress that we've made on clean transportation options like clean vehicles and better street designs that help get people off of cars and into more active modes of transportation. So on the clean vehicle front, we've hit a couple major obstacles in the last few months in the federal level. One piece is the federal government has stopped accepting people or states to adopt advanced clean vehicle standards that were pushed out in California. And they've also repealed a lot of the clean vehicle tailpipe emission standards that were set under the Biden administration. So really right now the federal government is doubling down on fossil fuel infrastructure for vehicles. And what we're trying to do here in the state is making sure that we are continuing to build out the infrastructure necessary to help transition some of our vehicle fleets to clean vehicle infrastructure. So we're working with State Rep Barbara Hernandez and Senator Porfirio to put together a set of policies that complement each other. So on the House side, we're going to start off with the Clean Vehicle Infrastructure Act, HB 5482, that really will help continue building out charging infrastructure both in new homes, in mixed-use buildings, but also along tollways and highways, and making sure that there is a jobs plan that coordinates these infrastructure projects to ensure that we're not doing a race to the bottom, but a race to the top in how we're developing some of this vehicle technology. Similarly, on the Senate side, we're going to be working on a diesel emission update and getting information on fleet data that operates within the state. So we're looking at those medium and heavy duty vehicles within the state limits to really analyze how many of these vehicles just operate within our borders. We know that we're a pass through for a lot of big trucks, but we can't regulate those big trucks, but we can do a lot to regulate the fleets within our state borders. And getting that data information will help us make bigger steps forward in subsequent years as we are looking to transition those medium and heavy duty vehicles to more clean vehicle standards. Similarly, we're looking to help promote a switch to active modes of transportation across the state. And some of the gaps that we continue seeing is there's a lot of disconnect between how we're educating kids and people on how to ride bikes within our communities along the streets, and also as they turn into drivers, how do you integrate the roads for both bikers and drivers and pedestrians? So we're looking to reinvest in the school bicycle education program and really like redefine what is in that program. So we're working very closely with Senator Guzman and Rep. Rohr to help update the school bicycle education program. And then finally, one bill that we're really getting a lot of eyes on is the Clean Transportation Standard. This is a bill that has come up in our General Assembly multiple times over the last several years, and we've been engaged in a stakeholder process with Senator Kaler's office. This particular bill is a market solution that rewards fueling standards that are the least that produce the least greenhouse emissions. So we were really looking to support electric vehicles here, and it charges a lot of funding to fueling standards that are the most pollutant, so looking at fossil fuels. The problem here is we've seen clean transportation standards or low carbon fuel standards in other states, and there's a lot of concerns that we have that a bill without safeguard rails around agriculture, around land use for biofuels, and support for EJ communities and a transition to electric vehicles. If it's not the right way, we're really concerned to let this bill move forward. So that's something that we're really engaging on and looking to educate our partners, because this is a cross collaborative bill between transportation, open space, and agriculture partners. So it's something that we're really looking to dive into here. Um, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our water bills. Right now, we're under development on how we um, develop our policies around water. And right now, one of the biggest pieces that we named earlier is how we're utilizing water with data centers. So this is really helping us ground a lot of our people to get engaged in here, but we're really looking at future years on how do we continue protecting groundwater and surface water here in Illinois, and thinking about some of the long-term um, issues that might come up here in the state as we continue to grow, develop, our industries, making sure that we protect our clean water resources for long generations, and making sure that we don't put a lot of strain on that. And we're also looking at other issues within the water sector, like flooding mitigation and flooding support for communities that have been under flood because of torrential rains due to a lot of the changes that we're seeing with our climate, and also making sure that we are supporting this transition from our lead service pipelines across the state, and engaging on policies that will help facilitate that, but that won't cause a lot of concerns around how people are notified, or how people have access to our pipeline. So there's a lot of moving pieces here. We're really excited on building up our water work, and soon and shortly, I think y'all will meet some of our program team members who are going to be digging into this. So there's more to come on that front. And to close us out on our legislative priorities, I'm going to turn it back to Jen to talk about our environmental justice priorities.
Sure. And I know with water, we're also working a lot with Senator Villavelom on funding of lead service line replacement. So expect something there. We expect this to be the year that we finally move forward the environmental justice air permitting bill that creates a new map for environmental justice from the IEPA. So and does a cumulative impact analysis and looks at the biggest air permits. We've been working on this for several years. We really think that this is the year. There's a kind of compromise proposal out there that's written by IEPA that we would like to move forward, starting with Senate Bill 3772. We also are part of the Make Polluters Pay campaign, and Kate has been on the steering committee of that group to create a climate superfund. And this is much like the Superfund law for the state that looks at hazardous waste. This looks at places where climate has had, there's been damages from climate change that are already happening, that are going to continue to occur, and how do we make the polluters who caused that pay for it? We also did a climate displacement task force last year, and there's an important bill that extends that timeline, and that's Senate Bill 2980. Danny worked a lot on that. And the Warehouse Pollution Reduction Act is a bill that we're working on that has to do with the indirect air source rule and looking at pollution from vehicles. And so that's an exciting one that we're going to continue to educate on this year as well. So I think that concludes our presentation. And Danny, I'm happy to take us through some, yeah, we've got our general inbox there. And if you email there, you'll be forwarded to one of us. Danny, do you want me to head into some of these questions?
Yeah, that would be great. I think
I'll take the.
starting off, James, you want to cuff mute?
Hey, let's we're not going to take off mute. If people
Okay.
can put their if you have a question, please just put your information in the chat or in the Q&A if that's okay. Thanks,
Yeah.
Danny. But there's 4 questions in the Q&A right now. And I can start with, are there links to continue taking action on the polystyrene ban? And we do have an action alert. I just noticed it's not on our website, so I will talk to our comms team because it's the same as last year, because we're still working on both of the bills in that action alert. So we will re-up that and get that on the website as soon as possible. And then Terry asked the really important question, are you planning lobby days this session? And I will say yes, we hope to and want to and been working on it for 6 weeks, but the Capitol is overwhelmed with people because there are only 8 weeks that both chambers are in session. So there are very few days to hold lobby days. And so just stay tuned. We are going to do things. We're going to work on some district office items as well, like having people meet when they're back home. But we do not have those done. Oh, and the action alert is in the chat. Um, uh, yeah, Danny, do you want to focus on any? Well, which ones do you want to focus on any of these?
Yeah, I can help answer Luisa's questions on some of the bills that we need help on the state level. I know we have so many of these, but definitely like top priorities this year include the polystyrene foam ban, our power sector bill, or the power bill, the data center bill, and also our wetlands bills. So I think if we can prioritize there, we can definitely have those moving. And Brock asked, can we have access to this recording after it concludes? We will send that along to anyone who's registered for this presentation, and it'll come to y'all shortly after we conclude today.
Mhm. Great. And I know, okay, we have a couple of bigger questions here. I want to talk about witness slips. And I know, James, you had put a question on witness slips. Um, in here. In witness slips, I actually have already recorded a short webinar for folks on witness slips that will give you more instruction on what is a witness slip, why a witness slip, when you should do a witness slip. And what I'm going to tell you all as members of IEC is that you should wait for us to direct you when to put witness slips in. I mean, you can definitely do it on your own, but a lot of the times we like to combine a lot of actions to focus on a particular piece of legislation and then show that there's a lot of support for that particular bill. And sometimes we might just want to show organizational support. You can only file a witness slip from when it is posted to committee until the committee is over. You can't do it at any other time. And I will tell you also, if all you're doing is witness slips, that's not the best way to interact with your lawmaker. Your lawmaker will not see your witness slip, only that your name and a list and the people in the committee will see it. If you want to take action on a bill, call your lawmaker, send them an email, use our forms, use all of those things to contact lawmakers. Don't just rely on witness slips. And in fact, I'm going to tell you, as a member of IEC, to be as effective as possible, put your witness slip in and then contact your lawmaker, or vice versa. Contact your lawmaker and then put the witness slip in. Those things, those actions should always, always, always be paired. And that's the way that we can be the most powerful people possible. Um, yeah, Danny, do you want to answer this question about how do you see the interconnection of the various issues like warehouses and immigration?
Yeah, I mean this is a big like ongoing development. I think we're seeing a lot of interconnectivity with a lot of our concerns around where these warehouses are being placed, and also how immigration patterns have shifted a lot over the last several years. So the Climate Displacement Task Force is really helping us look at and analyzing what the potential movement of people will look like in the next 20, 30 years because of the issues with climate change and what we can expect here in Illinois. So, I think this is really helping us make a lot of those bridges with some groups here in the state capital and across Illinois that work with various different uh, classes and populations, and we're looking how we can support each other's bills and talk about this. So I think there's a growing movement of communication amongst you know like-minded lobbyists here in Illinois to help move those things forward.
And I do see will drivers ed include bicycle training from Ellen in the chat.
The driver's ed will not include bicycle training as of right now, but we are following the lead of Ride Illinois and Active Transportation Alliance on how they're looking to advance some of those educational resources.
Great. Samira, do you have, if the data center bill passes, when does it take effect? I think there's different pieces, but I think it's immediate.
It should be immediate, but depending on the provision, there may be a delay.
Yeah. And it doesn't apply to previous data centers that are already built. This is new ones, which is a lot. But unfortunately, it's really difficult to apply a lot of these provisions to ones that are already in the ground. So, um, okay, and then there's a question about the Fossil Fuel Divestment Act, SB 130, and we are supporting a number of bills that I think are really similar in terms of divesting from fossil fuels or um, the bills on pensions, and these are really important bills that we want to pass. There's also a bill about extreme weather recovery that has to do with climate change and insurance. All of these bills are really important, but they do have some challenges in front of them in terms of stakeholders. I've heard some good things about, some of the divestment bill, maybe having some changes that helps with the pension systems. But we're supporting them, and we'll take any opportunity that we do have that's available. But our members and our coalition, in that vein, have decided to prioritize the Make Polluter Pay Climate Superfund bill as the one that's going to be the most impactful. But these are all bills that we're supporting. And even though this was a ton of bills, there are other bills that we are supporting or opposing that are not on this list because it's things we're working on and may or may not meet some criteria. So we're definitely, when we make our decisions, we talk to our members throughout the year about urgency, about impact, about the equity impact, and the passability of bills. And passability is often something that we do not control. So yeah, so that's helpful. Uh, and then do you want to answer the Transportation Choices Act one, Danny? Would you be filing the Transportation Act bill?
Yes. So the Transportation Choices Act is still under development this year. So at the end of last year, we were following a report developed by the Blue Ribbon Commission here in Illinois that's making a lot of recommendations to the Department of Transportation on what are some changes that they could do to meet a lot of the goals of Transportation Choices Act. So we're working very closely with IDOT and also the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning to really strengthen the Transportation Choices Act. So it's why it's not on our priority list this year. I think we're doing a lot of work on strengthening that bill to make it passable. So it is something that is being worked on this year, but it's not likely to be called during this year's session. So more to come on that, Tanya.
Great. I think we answered this, Kathy. Does the data center bill grandfather in data centers that have applied but not approved? Well, so yes, if it's applied but not approved, it would apply to them. But if it's in the ground, it won't apply. And then there's this question about, are there priority bills where it looks like the governor's office needs some context to give more attention? And so, and I'll preface this with our governor is fantastic. He's been a fantastic climate change champion. We're not 1,000, 100% in agreement with every action or every prioritization, right? So we do some advocacy to try to affect priorities and change his mind. But I would say like your state lawmakers are the most important people for you to contact. And there's a contact form on the governor's website you can definitely do as well. But if there's something that you really care about and you want to get the attention of the executives in the state, I actually would recommend that you write a letter to the editor to your local paper. I know that our governor reads a lot of press and a lot of media. And so if there's something you really genuinely care about, trying to get an LTA in the Tribune, the Sun-Times, the State Journal Register, your local paper would be really important. So that would be my recommendation to you. We definitely love to see that. Um, and then, yeah, what are the barriers to passing the Wetlands Protection Act? Um, Kate or Danny, do you want to? I mean, I can definitely cover that one, but just getting some different voices here. Would one of you like to talk about the challenges? Be Kate.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that's going to be continuous, but obviously federal rollbacks plays a huge, um, or are we talking about wetlands, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep. Well,
I
it's the best, yeah.
think one, you have the SACA versus EPA decision that came out in 2023, so that set us back. Illinois already didn't have any federal federally protected wetlands, and so after that decision, that then sealed the deal. You now have the rollback of the voters' decision at the federal level. So a lot of this is coming down, like kind of like top down from federal. So when you don't have federal protections, it's extremely hard to then do that at the state level. We also have a few organizations that have historically opposed our efforts, just to name Illinois Farm Bureau, to pass wetlands bills. And so essentially, it's just about getting, people to see that wetlands provide drinking water sources or, safe drinking water efforts. They, protect our ecosystems and just getting our, I guess, legislators and lawmakers, but also potential organizations to see that they provide, resources for us. So we'll continue working there, essentially, but it's a little bit difficult when you don't have federal protections either. But I think it still remains a priority.
Yep. And Joyce, we do support the no eminent domain pipeline bill. I know that that has been a piece that has been explored before, maybe more broadly. I do think there's going to be some good support from some agricultural entities, so that's really great. But I do think it's going to be extremely difficult to get done, and so this is it's a tough year, but we are supporting that one. Samira, would you like to help with this question? How do you educate people about data centers, fossil fuels, etc.?
Yeah. And if the question is more around how can you all support talking about the data centers bill, really leaning into affordability has been key here, and ensuring both energy and water efficiency. So without action, utility bills will continue to rise. We'll continue to see risks to our grid infrastructure and constraints on the grid. Um, and also our water resources will continue to be used in ways that we won't know about due to lack of transparency. So it's really important that we pass the Power Act to have control over our utility bills so that everyday people are not footing the bill for data centers energy use, and that we can get more information about their water usage and eventually be able to rein in further regulations around water use as well.
Great. Okay. And then we might need a little more on this one. Can you comment a little on how damage has been done by the refusal of the federal government to release funds that were previously approved for environmental remediation? I'm not sure if there's a specific project, or Kate, do you know specifically here?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. And I think you may be talking about maybe like the brownfield cleanup or other projects. But basically, in short, when the federal government refuses to release the funds that Congress has already authorized for environmental remediation and also other different related resilience projects, I think the consequences are kind of like multifold. So like that cleanup work it could be delayed or it could be canceled completely. Communities, they can lose out on different, health and economic benefits. I think something also important is that we don't have clear direction from the federal government right now on which projects are actually withheld or have lost funding, or some that or funding that has been allocated and it just not hasn't yet been distributed. I think also local redevelopment is hindered. There's also long-term costs that you kind of endure. So this funding stagnation, I would call it, it isn't just necessarily like slowing process or progress. it's also like leaving those hazardous kind of conditions in place longer. So it's extending those environmental health risks. And essentially kind of undermining the very purpose of our appropriations process that Congress passed in the first place. So I think you're maybe hinting at like the brownfield cleanup or like the different water infrastructure projects that we've had. But I mean, they're all critical environmental and public health projects. But unfortunately, if we don't have timely federal reimbursement, if we don't have a timeline of those, like when those projects can continue, we don't necessarily know how to move forward at the state level there.
Okay, that's really great. Let me see. How far along is the food waste diversion bill? So I do think the food waste diversion bill, there's still some work to agree with the IEPA on where it should be. And then there's going to need to be some stakeholder negotiations, especially with folks like the waste haulers, or maybe some of the retailers that don't agree with the bill. And so I think that I think it's gone pretty far, but it might. I'm not sure. I know the sponsor wants to get it done this year. Um, could be this year, could be a bill for the future, but definitely we are spending a lot of time educating people on food recovery and also on landfill emissions. So exciting stuff. Okay, yeah, and we're at 12:53. Anybody want to put some last questions in the chat? Otherwise, just like really encourage you to look for when we put out witness lab requests or when we send out action alerts or lobby days. Those are all ways that you can get involved. Or if any of these, even without our action alerts, which our action alerts are all on our website. I think these are pretty up to date, including the Power Act on here. But like, look for when we send them an email, and would love for you to take action on these. Or if you saw one and you just know your lawmaker's phone number, um, call your lawmaker and leave them a message that you want them to support it. If all of the people on this call today did that on all of the bills, it would be really meaningful. So if there's one that really moved you, make sure your lawmakers know that you want to see them support it. So. Um, yeah, I think any last words, Danny? I think we got all our questions in.
Yeah, no, thank you once again for joining us, for being supportive of our mission. And like Jen said, your action alerts, your calls, your emails to legislative offices go a long way to make sure that they are supporting our initiatives and our goals here. So, I think for this week, we're going to be watching the state of the state, and we'll be providing an analysis of the budget. Sometime this week, so definitely be on the lookout for that. But we really thank everyone for taking this time today to hear about 2026, the General Assembly.
Yeah, really. Well, thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody.